What do you get when you mix raw talent, ruthless aggression, and a life full of chaos? Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull. But behind the legend lies a story far darker than you might expect. Growing up in the tough streets of New York during hard times, Jake LaMotta didn't just survive, he dominated. Unlike other young men who were tough with their fists, Jake took things to a terrifying new level. His violent streak extended beyond the ring, often leaving victims in real danger. This wasn't just about fighting, it was about control and fear. Jake was notorious for taking pleasure in intimidation and inflicting pain, making him a fearsome figure both inside and outside the ring. His life story is a tangled web of brutal fights, personal demons, and shocking behavior. But there's more than just violence here. There's a complex man struggling with inner demons that shaped his entire existence. As we unravel Jake LaMotta's journey, you'll see how a champion's rage can become his own worst enemy, and how a legend is born not just from glory, but from the chaos that surrounds it. Early life and ruthless nature. Growing up in the tough streets of New York during hard times, Jake LaMotta didn't just survive, he dominated. Unlike other young men who were tough with their fists, Jake took things to a terrifying new level. His violent streak extended beyond the ring, often leaving victims in real danger. This wasn't just about fighting, it was about control and fear. He carried his aggression everywhere, turning petty conflicts into brutal encounters. For example, when robbing a jeweler, he didn't just scare the man and run off with the goods. No, he nearly beat the man to death with a pipe. His cruelty wasn't limited to strangers. It seeped into his personal life, as he physically abused his wives. Jake truly seemed to take pleasure in causing physical harm to others, with a sadistic streak that marked his darkest moments. Growing up during rough years in New York City, a life of crime tempted many young men. Most were tough and quick with their fists, but Jake was different. His reputation grew as someone who struck fear into everyone he knew, and his brutality became legendary. This savage nature would later be captured in Martin Scorsese's The Raging Bull. But back then, it was a reality lived daily. Jake's refusal to back down and his raw aggression made him a force to be reckoned with, setting the tone for the fierce competitor he would become in the ring. But beneath this toughness was a man whose violence was both a weapon and a curse. Savage reputation and sadistic behavior. Jake's brutality wasn't limited to opponents. He also subjected those closest to him to physical abuse. His reputation edged on sociopathy, showing a grim pleasure in inflicting pain. This chilling character trait became immortalized in Martin Scorsese's film, The Raging Bull, exposing the savage man behind the boxer. When robbing a jeweler, Jake wasn't satisfied with just scaring the man and running off with the goods. No, he nearly beat the man to death with a pipe. His violence extended to abusing his wives, revealing a sadistic streak that set him apart. Unlike many who fought in the ring, Jake found twisted enjoyment in causing real harm, making him a terrifying figure both inside and outside the ring. This brutal nature wasn't just about anger, but seemed to be part of who he was. The savage image he carried disturbed everyone around him, and it's no surprise that this persona was a focal point in The Raging Bull, a story that doesn't shy away from portraying the darkest side of a complicated man. Yet, even amid this cruelty, Jake always remained honest about who he was, a fact that makes his story even more compelling and haunting. Complex personality and public image. Despite his dark persona, Jake transformed into an elder statesman of boxing in later life, wearing his cowboy hat and seemingly mellowed by age. Yet, despite this outward change, his aggressive and manipulative nature persisted, tangled with deep insecurities and paranoia, revealing a man who could never fully escape his past or himself. Jake's public image was a complex blend of fear, respect, and fascination. On one hand, he was admired for his toughness and skill inside the ring. On the other, he was notorious for his violent outbursts and troubled personal life. This duality made him both a compelling and unsettling figure. Jake's journey from savage fighter to a memorable public character shows how time can soften appearances, but it rarely changes the core of a person. His cowboy hat became a symbol, not just of his later years, but of a man who carried the weight of his history wherever he went. People saw him as a lovable character during his elder years, but behind that charm was a lifetime of struggle with his inner demons. This complicated image was immortalized in popular culture, especially through Martin Scorsese's film, The Raging Bull, which brought his story to a wider audience. Jake never disputed the harsh portrayal. Instead, he appeared to accept it as part of his identity, a mix of pride and resignation. Ultimately, Jake LaMotta's complex personality and public image remind us that legends are rarely simple. They are built on contradictions, scars, and the relentless battle between who we are and who the world sees us as. Master of the boxing ring, Jake LaMotta's reputation as a brutal slugger is well-deserved. But there's much more to his boxing skills than just raw power. Contrary to the popular belief that he simply charged in recklessly, Jake was a brilliant tactician inside the ring. He mastered the art of rolling with punches, making his opponent's blows less damaging by skillfully moving his head as they landed, a technique he compared to a baseball player pulling back his glove to absorb the force of a catch. Beyond defense, LaMotta had an excellent left jab, which he threw from a crouch, adding a unique twist that caught many off guard. His ability to feint, parry, and slip punches showed a level of finesse rarely expected from his aggressive style. Watching his fights closely, you'll notice he was never just taking hits. He was cleverly redirecting their impact, buying time, and setting up his own devastating counters. This combination of toughness and strategy made him a formidable middleweight contender for years. Despite his savage reputation earned through fierce brawling, Jake's technical mastery meant he was more artist than brute in the ring. He didn't just fight with wild aggression. He fought smart, turning every punch into a calculated move that served his overall plan. This balance of brains and brawn is a major part of why LaMotta remains a legendary figure in boxing history, remembered not only for his tenacity, but his true skill as a ring master. Fight against the mob and career obstacles. Jake LaMotta's boxing career was not without extraordinary challenges, many linked to the shadowy influence of organized crime. Stories about why he was delayed a title shot vary, but both versions reveal the tangled web of the mob's involvement in boxing at the time. One account suggests Jake refused to cooperate with the mob, unwilling to play their game and follow their orders. Another tells a different story, that the mob actually wanted nothing to do with him because he was too unpredictable and too crazy for their comfort. Regardless of the reason, this standoff kept Jake from getting a title shot for years. Eventually, they struck a deal. Jake would deliberately lose a fight to Billy Fox. This shady agreement was supposed to clear the path for Jake to receive a legitimate title shot later. However, Jake didn't throw the fight convincingly, making it clear he wasn't fully on board with the arrangement. Despite these hurdles, 19 months later, Jake finally got his chance and won the middleweight title from Marcel Certain. Unfortunately, this triumph came when he was past his prime. Jake held the title for less than 2 years before losing it to his longtime rival, Sugar Ray Robinson. His battles weren't just in the ring, but against the corrupt forces trying to control his career. This struggle highlights not only the talent and determination of Jake LaMotta, but also the harsh realities many fighters face behind the scenes. His story is a powerful reminder of how the sport's darker elements shape the careers of even its toughest contenders. Life after boxing, controversies and struggles. After retiring, Jake LaMotta's life remained turbulent. He dabbled in acting and stand-up comedy, even serving time after legal troubles related to his nightclubs. His personal life reflected the same chaos as before: multiple marriages, scandals, and public fights, painting a portrait of a man who could never truly settle. Jake was far from the cage fighter he once was inside the ring. Instead, he found himself fighting battle after battle off the canvas. He performed bad stand-up comedy in AI nightclubs, which he sometimes owned, a far cry from his glory days. However, these ventures did not bring him the sort of attention he craved. Among the darkest parts of his post-boxing years were accusations surfaced around his nightclub activities. He served time on a chain gang after being convicted of introducing an underage girl to a man at one of his clubs. This legal trouble marred his reputation, showing a side of LaMotta that was as controversial as his boxing career was legendary. Despite his flaws and constant public struggles, Jake maintained a certain frank honesty about who he was, never shying away from the demons he wrestled with. His day-to-day life was punctuated by relationships that often ended in turmoil, with Jake's aggressive and unpredictable nature damaging those closest to him. This side of him contrasted sharply with the public persona he tried to maintain as a former boxing champion and entertainer. Yet, even with this chaos, Jake's story remains a testament to the complicated nature of fame and personal demons. His struggles after boxing reveal how difficult it can be for athletes to detach from the violence and intensity that define their prime years, and how those inner battles can sometimes be the most relentless of all. The real man behind the legend. Jake LaMotta, the man immortalized as the Raging Bull, was a complex figure whose life was defined by contradictions, raw emotions, and relentless intensity. Beyond the boxing ring, LaMotta struggled with demons that shaped him into much more than just a fighter. Known for his fierce aggression inside the ring, he carried that same fire into his personal life, marked by volatile relationships and bouts of paranoia. He manipulated and dominated those around him, never shying away from displaying his power, but beneath this tough exterior, insecurity brewed. His violent tendencies extended to his wives and friends, revealing a man wrestling with deep-seated anger and pain. Despite his brutal reputation, LaMotta was painfully self-aware, admitting flaws and insecurities, even as he refused to apologize for his past. This raw honesty made him both feared and intriguing, a man trapped between wanting control and craving understanding. His ego drove him to extremes, yet there were moments of vulnerability, especially evident when he struggled to channel his anger constructively. LaMotta's relationship with his brother, and instances of genuine care, gave glimpses of a man who, despite all the chaos, was searching for connection. The contradiction between his monstrous public persona and the fragile inner man paints a haunting portrait of a man unable to escape his own nature. This duality is what makes Jake LaMotta so fascinating, reminding us that behind the legend lies a deeply broken, yet fiercely human individual. Legacy and reflection. Remembered as one of boxing's best middleweights, Jake LaMotta's legacy is complicated. He was a great fighter, yet a deeply flawed man, whose out-of-ring battles were as fierce as those in the ring. His story challenges us to separate the myth from the man and question what it truly means to be a champion. Jake LaMotta's life was a fiery mix of talent, violence, and vulnerability. His unmatched courage and skills inside the ring were shadowed by a lifetime of pain and chaos outside it. As we look back, we see not just a champion, but a man wrestling with his own demons, proving that sometimes the fight continues far beyond the spotlight. His story reminds us that greatness often comes with a price, and that behind every legend, there is a human being flawed and complex, deserving of both admiration and scrutiny. Jake's ability to endure and fight despite personal demons is both inspiring and cautionary. It forces us to consider how we define success and legacy. Is it the titles won or the battles fought within? Ultimately, Jake LaMotta's legacy leaves us with a powerful reflection on the cost of fame and the complexity of the human spirit. This is a story that will continue to captivate and provoke thought for generations to come. Jake LaMotta's life was a fiery mix of talent, violence, and vulnerability. His unmatched courage and skills inside the ring were shadowed by a lifetime of pain and chaos outside it. As we look back, we see not just a champion, but a man wrestling with his own demons, proving that sometimes the fight continues far beyond the spotlight. His story challenges us to separate the myth from the man, to understand the complex nature of greatness and the heavy price it can demand. Jake LaMotta will forever be remembered as one of the top middleweight champions of all time, but also as a deeply flawed and fascinating figure whose legacy is as much about his battles outside the ring as those within it. This harsh reality reminds us that a champion's fight is not just against opponents, but also against the shadows inside themselves.